G'day, I'm Ken Grant, and today I'd like to share with you some really fun thoughts about becoming a servant leader. So let me lead off with this question. Ever had a bad boss? I'm sure we all have, unless you're really young, right? We've all had that boss or two that like, oh, don't even mention their name. Think about it though. Having had that experience with a bad boss, is there a chance that you picked up on some of those bad habits and brought them into your own version of management? I used to have a teacher when I was a young kid, 19, violin teacher. He was so mean, so strict, so off the charts. That was my very first impression of what I would consider a bad boss. And some of those bad tendencies have gone with me to this day. Now let me ask you the second question. Have you ever had a great boss? Hopefully you have. I have. I had a great experience. When I very first moved from California to Washington, I was leaving music behind. I'd done it. I'd been there, done that. I was like, I got to have a new career. I moved up to Seattle. Didn't have anybody that I knew to stay with. Had to start a whole new fresh career. And oddly enough, this is a little known fact, oddly enough, I was a receptionist. I got a temp job and they said, listen, we love your accent. You're going to go and answer phones. Like, you know, God bless receptionists, but that was not really a job that I wanted to do. So in my past, in California, I had also been a TV reporter. And I was inquisitive. I've always been inquisitive. So I started asking around every single person in that office what it is that they did and what it is that they like to do and what it is that they thought could be done better within the company. Well, the boss got wind of this and she pulls me aside one day and she goes, what's this I hear? You are asking my staff all these questions about themselves. I'm like, I told her the truth. I said, well, I don't think receptionist is really where I need to be. This is a part of my past and this is what I've learned. She goes, well, what have you learned? I said, well, half the people here don't want to market. She goes, well, what would that mean? She came back a week later and I had to present to her my thoughts about a marketing plan. I'd never done one in my entire life. I'm making this up as I'm going along. And she goes, that's great. You know what? I like it. You start tomorrow marketing, you get the office next to mine. That was one of the most incredible moments in time where someone was such a servant leader, to such the degree that she would believe in somebody and she knew I'd never done it. And I saw her a few years ago and she goes, you know, I still use your materials to this day. You know how that made me feel? Her perception of me, her ability to just see something that I didn't even see, walks with me to this very day. Part of that then has influenced how it is that I see the world and how I personally treat other people. So let's start the 10 layers of being a servant or becoming a servant leader. And I'm going to start at the very, very top. This is, to me, it looks like a funnel. I want to start with what I call the leader's oath. One of the things we notice in life, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is that there are lots of people surrounding us that don't seem to deserve being a leader. They don't deserve being the manager. How in the world they even got to there, we're not even sure. But they fumble through it. And we're going to sort of see that show up many times in today's conversation. But we built an oath to really get people's minds around, I am a leader. I understand the awe-inspiringness of what it is that I bring to the table, how it is that the people around me, I'm responsible for them, right? I am responsible for those people's well-being, their mortgage, their dog care, their daycare. That's my job. I have very few things, but as a leader, and I'm responsible for that team, I'm responsible for them and their well-being. So we put this oath together and I want to share this with you and I want to see if you will take it with me. And if it doesn't stick, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about it a little later on. Here's how it goes. I, fill in your name, understand the roles, responsibilities, and awe-inspiringness of being a leader of people, to be the one whom they respect, who listens, who has their back. I'll strive to be a better leader than a manager. I'll never take the gravity of my role as a leader for granted. If you know that you're a leader, you need to appreciate what that means. Doesn't mean it goes to your head. It almost means it goes to your heart. So we want to start there with taking the manager's oath. So let's go to layer 2 of the 10 in our journey through to becoming a great servant leader. To me, it's one of the most important in the entire 10, and that's being and offering dignity and respect to those around you. Listen, the reason we go to work is to be treated like an adult. The reason we go to work is because we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, right? The reason we go to work is that we can be part of a team. And if your boss does not treat you with the dignity and respect that you deserve, therefore you may not be treating those around you with the dignity and respect that they deserve, then all bets are off. Why would somebody be loyal to you? Why would somebody show up every day and work harder than the day before, right? Think about this for a reason. The number one reason for kids abuse in the US right now is neglect. Parents just don't show dignity and respect to their kids. Same thing at work. It's not that hard. Let's think about it. Do I offer dignity and respect for those around me? Well, if you think back to your bad boss experience, that was probably the number one thing they did not do. They treated you like the what's it on the bottom of your shoe. They didn't give you the time of day. They didn't respect you. They didn't treat you well. They didn't treat you like an adult. Right? So that's why we start with this. But I'll also give you the kicker, is that we also have to understand how to treat ourselves with dignity and respect. Because if we can't start with ourselves, it's almost impossible to share that outward. So it's a yin and a yang to this. Dignity and respect for ourselves, dignity and respect for those around us. All right, layer number 3. What I call 360-degree communications. What is that? Well, if you're a manager or a leader in a company, you want to make sure that you always know what's happening, where the company's going, why it is that you're doing something. But that goes the other way. You need to be making sure that you give that information also to those people around you. In all the years that I've been building brands, it starts with a lack of communication internally. Listen, marketing directors around the world can put out millions of dollars, billions of dollars worth of ad campaigns, but if I don't know internally what's happening and why I do the thing, that this nugget goes with this thing, then why do I even get up? Why do I even go to work? I got to know why and where it is that I'm going. Historic maybe is important, but where it is that we're going and why it is that we do the thing that we do. Very important. So that being holistic around communications, I think, is so important. It also drives to the bottom line of the brand, right? I'm a huge proponent that you are the brand that represents this company. You're the number one person. You may be the only person I've ever met. Therefore, you are the brand. The more information you've got about the company that you work for, then the higher degree that you have of showing up, representing that brand as part of your persona. Here's another important one. That's the ability to have empathy and compassion for those around you. Listen, not sympathy. Let me get way ahead of this conversation right now. Not sympathy. The last thing we ever want is sympathy. Oh, the poor, ever been in that? Of course you have, right? You're like, I don't need your flipping sympathy. I'd like you to be compassionate to what I'm going through. Not, the little violins come out. I want you to be empathetic about what I'm going through, right? We've all heard the notion of what does it take for me to be in your shoes? That's exactly what we're talking about. I heard a great story once. I was teaching this class, and a gentleman in the class, we get to this point and he goes, I think I get exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, go ahead. He says, I had a woman on my team who was just, something was going on. Something was not, whatever was happening, it just did not seem like her. He had the courage to go ask, permission-wise, can I ask what's going on? He had built enough trust over time, like, yeah, you know what, I feel embarrassed about this, but I will share with you, I had a miscarriage. Opportunity. Am I sympathetic to that? He can't be sympathetic. He's never gone through this and he never will go through this. But can he be empathetic? She doesn't need to be, she didn't ask, like, I don't need to be far. I just wanted to share with you, this is what's been going on. This is why I may not seem like I'm on my A game. I'm okay with you knowing that. He then took the responsibility to go, how do I take care of you? How do I look after you? Well, I'd really like to take 2 weeks off and just sort of process this because this is some heavy stuff. He did. Anything that she wanted, she got because he was just being empathetic. He was being compassionate to the situation. Did they lose money? Did the company close down? Nothing of that. He just led with his heart and was smart enough to go, you know what? Whatever you need, you've got it. That's the pure definition of empathy and compassion. If we can do that, that's one of the greatest layers of being a spectacular servant leader. Let's move on to number 5. We're flying through these. Number 5 is also really important. That's transparency. Listen, if you're around in the 80s, that was the last thing anybody ever thought about was transparency. It was always, hey, we've got this, we've got a deal for you, right? Transparency now shows up in, listen, I didn't like that company. They mistreated me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to Glassdoor and I'll show you transparency, right? The whole world is so different now that we don't have a choice but to be transparent. Back to what I said a minute ago about how it is and where it is that we're going. Transparency can show up in any ways, but if I sniff for a second that you're hiding something behind me, or if you're doing something, or where you're sending us into battle to do something that is irregular, that's not transparent. That's hiding something, and we'll just take care of that fast. That's the greatest thing about social, right? Social media allows us, particularly Glassdoor inside of companies, to go, listen, I don't agree with that. And I'm going to show the world that I don't agree with that. And lots of companies are like, oh my God, I can't even control the narrative about what people are saying. Well, you can control it by being transparent, by offering people in your company the ability to show up every day as being magnificent. Okay, another one of my very favorites is the ability to listen to learn. I'll break this into 2. The ability to listen is also an art form that seems to be going away, right? You've had a conversation, you're in a conversation with your boss, and they keep on wanting to cut you off. They keep on thinking that they've got this crystal ball and they can answer the rest of the question or the statement that you are making, right? Have you gone through this? The challenge is that we also do it ourselves. I find myself doing this with my kids, and it is the worst thing in the world. How about I let them finish their thought process? I don't know where their thought process is going. They might go left, they might go right. But unless I am willing to listen to the whole thought process, I don't know what's going to happen. Same at work, right? Our ability to listen is so important, but our ability to listen to learn is even more important. What am I learning about this person, right? We're going to talk about one of these in a second. What am I listening for? Are they complaining to me? Well, let them complain. Let them finish. One of the tricks that I learned years ago was there's 2 ways to have a conversation with someone. One is if I know somebody's gonna like just dump on me, I'm gonna ask them a quick question first. Would you like to just dump on me, or would you like me to come up with a solution? Whoa, nobody ever asked me that before. Great. Which do you want? I just need to dump. I need to get this off my chest. I need to do it. Great. Let them get that off their chest. Let them finish and thank them for their time. There's no judgment. There's no interplay. There's nothing. Like they just wanted to vent. You let them vent. The other option, though, is they want to fix. They want to vent. How are you going to fix this? Well, now that you've said this, and I heard you say this, this, and this, if I'm correct, yes, now I can start coming up with solutions. And if I'm smart, I'm going to start coming up with solutions that are your solutions, not mine, right? That's the ability to listen, to learn. It's fantastic. And if you get it right, if you can just shut up for a minute, it is monumental how that person feels, again, to the dignity and the respect. Wow, they really listened to me. I felt listened to, right? Think about that. So this next one is really hard for a lot of us, and I'll put myself in this camp, and that's the ability to take our ego out of the case study, out of the situation. How did this happen? I don't understand. And all of a sudden you start, right? All because I might have got my ego involved. I might have got my feelings hurt. I might have been outside of my league. I might not have had an answer. I may not have fill in the blank. When our ego gets involved, it starts chattering so far ahead of us, and all of a sudden, all of our insecurities show up. For me, I should have had that answer. How come I didn't have that answer? As a brand strategist, you're paid to come up with answers. How did I not have that answer? Insecurity starts biting at you and your fears come out and you're like, wow. And all that is driven by your ego. A great servant leader, on the other hand, will understand that it takes a village, right? If we're learning something through this, and if there's a theme through this entire conversation, it takes a village. It takes a village to be heard. It takes a village of dignity, right? It takes a village of respect. It takes a village of just being understood, Now we're at level 8. You can see these funneling like I started the conversation with today, like they get heavier and deeper, but they all start to make sense. They're like a mathematical puzzle. Number 8 is being courageous. Having the courage, taking back the fear, taking back the ego, having the courage to make a decision, having the courage to look after everyone around you, right? Having the courage to step up and ask questions, to get to know people, to get their trust, and thusly you trust them. And sometimes we have to make really hard decisions in this world, which take a lot of courage. One of the great things about a servant leader is that they can then look at all the pros and cons. They can look at all the data around them and then make that decision to the best of their ability. They don't make it off the cuff. They don't run around putting their head down in the sand. They don't run around screaming and right like it was your fault, it was everybody's fault, and everybody. They have the courage to stop, take a breath, process, and make a decision. And if you think that is easy, then I'm going to have another conversation with you. It's one of the hardest things in the world is to make a definitive, calculated decision, particularly when it's around those around you. Now you start to understand why transparency is so important. Oh, I didn't see that coming. Really? We talked about it. We were very open about that. Back to communications. Everything we talked about was leading to this thing. Now remember before we talked about asking, listening, right? I had asked you a million times, was there something going wrong? No, nothing's going wrong. And all of a sudden you're leaving and you're like, you never listened to me. Everything I did was trying to listen to you. Everything I did was asking you questions. You can't throw this back on me, right? If we have done everything else we've talked about, that courage, that courageousness will show up in a way that no one is surprised. Yeah, you know what? I feel good about this. I'm being led through this thing. As bad as it's going to be, I'm being led with courage. I'm being led with dignity. Now let's get down to the 2 crunches. Remember before I said that this was like a mathematical puzzle. We started with an oath. Do you believe that you are the leader necessary to lead? Plug in everything else. And if you've been taking notes all along, you will notice now that if you can do all the things we talked about, you now are showing up as a servant leader, right? And one of the definitions of being a servant leader is being empowered, but empowering everyone else. Being there, but basically being invisible. Putting your needs behind the one of your team, right? As a matter of fact, it's sometimes funny to me that we even use the word leader, because the leader should be out the front. That's just sort of how we were raised. But the leader in this case is always in the background. There's no ego. It's just compassion. It's just joy for those around you. It's trusting those around you. It's understanding those around you. It's having everything that we've talked about right there, here, to go, you know what, I think we've got this. As a matter of fact, I know we've got this. Which leads us all the way to number 10. The whole point to doing this is that we create such an amazing and extraordinary sense of employee engagement. Employee experience. That's the buzzword, right? We want to have a great employee experience. Well, I'll tell you what, buying someone a great big sofa and letting them bring their dog in on a Friday and giving them, the pool table in the back is all well and good. Fluff pieces. Because, and here's the whole point to all this, if you have a bad boss, you have a bad boss. Pool table, dog on Friday, flip-flop Thursdays, fill in the blanks. You have a bad boss, you'll always have a bad boss. You can't change that. A pool table does not change that. So my offer to you is, if you can think about in your leadership role to be that servant leader, then you have, in essence, created such a magnificent, open environment, transparent and everything else we've talked about. That is an environment that an employee wants to be part of. So we started today's conversation about taking that leadership oath. And I said at the time, if you weren't sure if that was really for you, like you couldn't feel it, I'm curious now if you can feel it. If you have going through these layers of experience, this journey to get to being a great servant leader, let's repeat it and see now if it starts to make more sense. I, fill in your name, understand the roles and responsibilities and awe-inspiringness of being a leader of people, to be the one whom they respect, who listens, who has their back. I'll strive to be a better leader than a manager. I'll never take the gravity of my role as a leader for granted. Yeah, I bet you're starting to feel that you've really got this now. That's awesome. So I will leave you with this. Thank you so much. I'm Ken Grant, and here is to your continued success.